Hey guys, it's Jod. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be going over two very important, very critical interview questions. What is your biggest strength? And what is your biggest weakness? Now with strengths, what stumps people the most about this question is they're not exactly sure what the company is asking. Are they asking about my technical strengths? Are they asking about my behavioral strengths? And how far do I go with my response so I'm not just continually rambling on, but I'm actually giving a sufficient response? Now with the weakness question, what everyone struggles with is understanding how bad to really talk about yourself and understanding what companies are really seeking out of this question. And honestly, it's very important to find a fine balance between how much you actually reveal in an interview about your weakness. Because too little appears as if the candidate is arrogant, and too much appears as if the candidate is a train wreck. In this video, I'm going to be going over two set formulas for you to answer these questions. One for your strength and one for your weakness. And if you structure your answers to the questions exactly as I present in the formula, you should be in the right shoes to impress your interviewer. These formulas are set to optimize exactly what companies are looking for and exactly what interviewers are expecting in your response. So make sure your answers follow the format I present. Then, after I go over these two formulas, I'm going to cover some general strategies for you guys to determine what your actual strengths and weaknesses are, in case you're struggling to come up with them. And the thing about these questions is, they're relevant for literally everyone, whether you're applying for a job or an internship, or you're still in school and you're trying to get into an extracurricular or a leadership position. If you have an interview, you're most likely going to have to answer the question of what is your biggest strength and what is your biggest weakness. So preparing ahead of time with the set structure, like the one I'm going to be presenting in this video, is key, and it's your best bet to succeeding in these interviews. And before I get too deep into this video, if you guys are new here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I post 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 3:45 p.m. EST, and I'd really love for y'all to always be there. Now with that being said, let's head into the first question, and that is, what is your biggest strength? And for reference, sometimes this is asked as, what is your greatest quality? But anyways, the main reason employers ask this question is to understand who you are quality-wise. And they really want to match your greatest quality and see if you'd have a fit at this company. And when it comes to actually answering this question, if you guys are saying stuff like,
my biggest strength or my greatest quality is that I'm a hard worker and I always go above and beyond expectations,
you are doing something fundamentally wrong. This is not a good response. This is actually a terrible, terrible response. And some people think that this is a really good response because it's exactly what a company wants to hear. I mean, what company doesn't want a hardworking person? What company doesn't want someone who goes above and beyond expectations? But the thing is, the reality is, when you say that in an interview, all you're telling the interviewer is that you're able to read and blurt out the textbook definition of a good employee. Someone who works really hard and someone who goes above and beyond expectations. You're not telling them anything unique or valuable. You're not really talking about you at that point. You're just talking about whatever's written in that textbook. But you need to get specific with you. So to do that, the structure that you should follow, the structure that I follow that I've been successful with, is starting out with this. So when you're asked the question, what is your biggest strength? Start out with saying, my biggest strength is blank. And typically I like to talk about my leadership and communication skills. So I'll start out by saying, my biggest strengths are my leadership and communication skills. Then I'll talk about a personal story or a personal example as evidence for the skill. And typically I'll reference how I was the founder and president of my robotics club. I'll talk about how I had to host events, how I had to coordinate with other leaders. I'll talk about how I had to regularly communicate with upper levels as well as continue to motivate and encourage club members. And I really try to show and not tell. I try to show my leadership through the story and not just read off the textbook definition of what the word means. And this really enhances my response. It makes my response sound very thoughtful and meaningful. After I mention that part of my response, I'll then transition and talk about how this applies to the company at hand. I mean, it's cool and all that I have this strength, but how do I plan on bringing it to your company? A sample way of going about this, kind of branching off my previous response about communication and leadership, is that right now in a stage where we're all virtual, communication is extremely vital. And at your company, you guys pride and value communication. Keeping everyone synchronous, keeping everyone on the same page is of utmost importance in order to ensure business and company success overall. Now, you'll notice that the question itself is just asking for your strength. It didn't mention about how does your strength apply to this company at all. But throughout your interview, throughout other questions, you always want to keep referencing this and putting yourself in context of the company. Because after all, that is why you are interviewing. The interviewer is not just trying to do some random personality test on you. They want to understand your personality, in context of how you would fit in the company. Always keep referencing, at this company, this is how I would apply. At this company, this is what I would do. So by continually referencing that, you'll put it into the mind of the interviewer and you up your chances and better your chances of passing and acing that interview. And really quick, if you guys are enjoying this video, if you're finding value, be sure to hit the like button and comment down below, what is your greatest strength? Now moving on to the weakness question. What is your greatest weakness? Now this is a very tricky question because no one really knows what companies are looking for. I mean, why are they even asking this question in the first place? Why do they want to know what my weakness is?
I mean, do I have to tell them about the time I...
Actually, never mind that. Basically, they're trying to get a holistic view of you. They're trying to see how human you really are. Because they know that all candidates do is on their resume and in interviews, they put off this perfectionist persona that they've never made any mistake in their life. When companies know that that's not true. You are human. So they want to understand how human you are. Now, an example of a really bad response to what is my biggest weakness that actually sounds pretty nice is, so my biggest weakness is that I struggle with a work-life balance. Oftentimes I'll just get work and I'll just keep on working and I won't really make time for my personal life.
So why is this a bad response?
I mean, it sounds really nice. I mean, this candidate, they just keep working. I mean, is that even a weakness?
The problem with this response is it's so readable that that wasn't a weakness, that I really tried to embed a strength in my weakness. And that's not what companies want. They don't want an embedded strength, they want a weakness. Also, another bad response is this.
My biggest weakness is I get angry a lot. I have 5 major pet peeves, and if anyone crosses a single line, then...
No, this is a bad response. They aren't looking for a personality trait, an unresolvable issue that you have internally. That is not what they're seeking. I mean, it's definitely a weakness, but it's not the right weakness to present to interviewers. But rather, structure your responses like this. First, state out your weakness, whatever that is, and then bring it up in a certain context or a scenario that it occurs in. A sample response to this is, one of my biggest weaknesses is when I'm working on a large-scale project. Sometimes I focus too much on minute details, and I really dive deep and focus a little too much on these details. And this leads me to sometimes losing sight of the larger picture, the larger project at hand. And so after laying out the scenario, it's very important, it's very crucial that you mention how you are actively working to mitigate this weakness. What are you doing to work on your weakness? So continuing off my response, how I would mention that I'm working on this weakness is that, so although I have this weakness, I'm actively working on it. Now every time I'm given a large scale project, I break it down into tasks. And then I break down into subtasks that approximately take about the same time. And then this way, I'm able to piece together each subtask that I'm working on and then look at the bigger picture as a whole. I never lose sight of it because I have it all written down, I have it all organized, and it stays nice and neat the whole time. No company wants to inherit a train wreck of a candidate. So you want to state your weakness and then say how you're working on it. And now for some general tips of how to determine your strengths and your weakness. How I really suggest you guys go about this is for every scenario and experience that you have written down on your resume, dive deep and look through them. And on a separate sheet of paper, write down everything that you know about it, all the highlights and all the lowlights of that experience. And through that, you should be able to piece together and sort of put words to scenarios such that for your highlights, you have your strengths. For your lowlights, you have your weakness. And that's about it. That's about as simple as it gets. Because in your questions, when you actually talk about your strengths and your weaknesses, you're always bringing them in context of a certain story or a certain event. And by mapping it to something that you have exactly in your resume, that should be an easy and fine way for you guys to actually discover and find your strengths and your weaknesses. And so now for a quick recap of both of those questions. So for your strength, start out with what your strength is, then actually addressing it with a specific story, then bringing it to the company of how you're going to apply your strength at the company. And as for your weakness, mention the weakness, then mention a scenario that it actually comes into play, and then talk about how you're actively working on it. And so if you guys prepare using these two structures, you should be just ready heading into that interview to answer what your strengths and weaknesses are. Well, that's about all I have for this video. I really hope that it was beneficial and you guys now feel confident answering the questions about strengths and weaknesses. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and comment down below what you guys want to see in my future videos. And if you want to see more content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video.